Yeah, there was apostates in the 1980s. I remember them. I saw them with my own eyes. But let me tell you, it was a different animal back then. I remember being a little boy, attending a summer district convention, probably 1984, 1985. And as our family was walking into the Coliseum, we saw a group of men standing outside, and they looked like Jehovah's Witnesses, but they weren't. These were not young ones who were having some fun. These were 40-year-old men wearing suits, business suits. They were dressed like Jehovah's Witnesses. They had the 1950s haircuts, the store-bought look. They were holding book bags. And I remember my dad picking me up like a piece of breakaway luggage and just tucking me under his arm, and just our family kind of zooming past them, even though they weren't trying to talk to anyone that I could see. They were standing there. They were motionless. They were standing there holding up brochures that looked like Watchtower publications. I remember they had the artistry on the cover of some eagle flying by in a beautiful garden. But they were scary. I remember the looks in their eyes. Those were scary men. There was something off about them. And I was compounded, as my parents explained to me later. And yes, they did talk to me about it. Jehovah's Witnesses insist on scaring their kids. And so my parents did set us kids down, explain that those are people who were Jehovah's Witnesses and got caught by Satan and became satanic. And did not hear or know anything more about apostates for a long time. Not even on television. They don't even talk about Jehovah's Witnesses on television, which is strange, considering that in the last days we're supposed to be the biggest thing going on, but it's like no one notices or cares. I always had a hard time reconciling that in my mind. But in the late 1990s, there was an elder named Brother Simpson who had 5 children, and his oldest son, Stephen, wanted to get a secondary education. He wanted to study agriculture, because I'm sure he had a good reason. Calm down. Calm down. And although higher education is discouraged by Jehovah's Witnesses, his dad made a deal with him that if he was serious about this, he could attend a 2-year community college, and if he followed through on that, then they would see about transferring to the state university. And Stephen had good grades. He kept up with meetings and service and everything, and he followed through on his dad's deal, and so he went to a 4-year university. And when he came back for the fall break, he'd only been there 2 months, and he returned to the Kingdom Hall and he was talking strange. He was saying strange things and alienating people. He was talking about the flood. I wasn't paying really close attention to what was happening, but I remember people saying that he was opening up Watchtower books to the part where they were talking about seashells on top of mountains, and he was arguing with that. And look, he wasn't studying natural history at college. He was going to an agricultural school where he was presumably studying wheat and corn. And 2 months, his mind had changed, and he went back to college. What he did not go back to was being a Jehovah's Witness. He was gone, and it served as an example for all the other families in the circuit that if your kids go to college, they're not going to come back JWs. And a few have from time to time, and they didn't. College is poison to a JW mind. They don't want you there. There was a man named Greg Olds. He was actually a district attorney in a small city in the state where I live. And no, this is not a made-up person. You can probably find him on the internet. He is a Watchtower lawyer. This is what I was told later. I can't tell you if it's true or not. He was working for the judicial system, the local government. I think he was the assistant district attorney. And one day, 2 Jehovah's Witnesses made an appointment to see him. And shortly after that, he was a interested person at the Kingdom Hall. He wanted to be a Jehovah's Witness. And shortly after that, he was serving at the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses, where I presume he still is to this day. He married a Jehovah's Witness woman, and her sister was married to a man I knew named Chris LaPrath. And no, this is not a made-up person. The story goes that he was at a district convention, and they left. They narrowly averted the apostates standing outside. When they stopped for gas, he opened the lid and found a apostate brochure stuck under the gas cap. It had to be small enough to fit between a gas cap and an opening, the lid that opens it, and whatever was written on that one piece of paper, it was enough. Whatever Chris LaPrath read that day, he stopped being a servant of Jehovah and became an enemy of God's people, which the word spread quickly through the circuit, what had happened, and the fear of apostates grew ever more urgent. If one brochure could your eyes can accidentally fall upon one piece of apostate literature, and your life goes down the tubes. And Chris LaPrath started going around telling people something about his brother-in-law, Greg Olds. He said that when Greg Olds was the assistant district attorney, 2 men who he did not know from the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society of Pennsylvania came to see him and offered him $10 million. The deal was that he would become a Jehovah's Witness, where he would be well paid and all his needs would be taken care of. And in return for serving there for 20 years, he would get a $10 million bonus. And the body of elders quickly disfellowshipped Brother Leprath, and Mary left him. The elders explained to Mary that since Chris had become an enemy of Jehovah, Jehovah would understand that she needs to divorce him. And she did. And she actually remarried another Jehovah's Witness man because the elders explained that because Chris Leprath had apostatized against Jehovah, he was dead in Jehovah's eyes. And not just regular dead. He had died the second death. He was dead as were people who are in the lake of fire, the death from which no one returns. District Convention, probably 1984, 1985. And as our family was walking into the Coliseum, we saw yeah, there was apostates in the 1980s. I remember them. I saw them with my own eyes. But let me tell you, it was a different animal back then. I remember being a little boy, attending a summer dinner. Saw a group of men standing outside, and they looked like Jehovah's Witnesses, but they weren't. These were not young